Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Before we get started, how about you press the subscribe button, give this video a like, and ring that bell so you know when I'm uploading new videos. Welcome back. Mistress of Horror, author D.L. Tillery here. Today we're talking about more vampires, go figure. This is part 3 in the series of Let's Talk Vampires in cinema and in novels at this point. So this time we're talking about romanticized vampires. I decided to compilate a list of 5 writers who I think do romanticizing vampires well, that I really enjoy. There are plenty other ones, but these are my top 5 that I go to read for romanticized vampires. And you might ask, what is a romanticized vampire, Mistress of Horror? I'm going to tell you. Now, I'm sure everyone also might have their own concept and opinion of romanticized, but it's pretty cut and dry in most cases. Romanticized, give you an example, would be, let's say, Twilight. That's a romanticized style vampire. There you have it. A not so romanticized vampire would be vampires from subspecies, let's say. And I mean, it's a preference. I mean, some of us like all styles of vampires, like moi. And then some of us prefer more vicious style vampires, and some of us prefer more romanticized style vampires, okay? That being said, like you can like either or you can like one style vampire if you would wish. I like to mix it up personally. I also enjoy vampires that may not just be in that one particular setting. Let's take the vampires from Underworld, for instance. And those vampires are somewhat romanticized because, but they have more like fighter style vampires, you know what I'm saying? And some of the ones that I consider romanticized are fighters as well, because I mean, it's in like a vampire's nature to be able to, battle, so to speak. But I think the vampires in Underworld are more, they're not romanticized so much as they have the beauty, yes, in most cases. I mean, you have the ones on there that are like not considered like they're not necessarily beautiful. That story isn't really just about the romance. Like, even though it has romance aspects in it, it's not really just about the romance in it. Though, you're gonna really come up against a wall on that because a lot of the stories is situated around the romantic entanglement of the main characters, let's say. Because that would be in the one Underworld, you have the female lead and then her romantic interest in the werewolf character. And then when you go down to the next ones, when the next one come out, it's still a romantic interest between the werewolf and another vampire. So yeah, that is definitely a focal point of their story. But the vampire, the fighting, and then the war between the werewolves and the vampires is that's the main thing. So it's kind of like a subplot, but it means around that too. But I mean, you can take it either way. Like, you might not be able to figure out which one is a subplot because they both are like wrapped around each other. But you get where I'm going with this. My top 5 writers to go to for romanticized vampires, obviously Anne Rice I mean, she has like a different story she writes, but Lestat being her main vampire that she leads with, more or less. Like, everyone knows who Lestat is. So her vampires are very romanticized to begin with, always beautiful, like to the point of like some people may get sickened by it. But they are very prestigious and cultured style vampires because that's the time periods that her vampires were born in. A lot of them very, very old vampires, and even if they make new vampires, and the vampires in her world are very cultured, and they very high class, if you will. So her vampires are very much like that. Kind of like in the sense, okay, I'm a goth, and then they have different types of goth, and then we have like classical goths and things of that nature, where we dress more high class, so more classical style goth with, like, let's say if I'm a female and I'm dressing in like the lace and long gown styles and things of that nature, always in my makeup and very, very dressed up. Okay, and then you have the ones that's not. Like, I can go either way, honestly. So that also applies with vampires and the way they may carry themselves, and then the different types and styles of vampires. But the romanticized vampire, definitely Anne Rice would be up on the top of the list. Not She's not the first one for me, because I mean there's so many writers out there. Some of my favorite ones besides Anne Rice would be Christine Feehan. Um, and I'll put their names, obviously, names right here. So you want to look them up if you don't know about them. Definitely her vampires, romanticized, but very, very good stories, like extremely very interesting stories. Um, I recommend her books. I have quite a few of her books in my collection. She does write other character styles, obviously, besides vampires. But most of her stories are very good. Paranormal type romance, things like that. Amanda Ashley is another one that I don't hear talked about a lot, but she is a bestseller type of writer, and she does vampires as well. She also does other type of beings in her stories, like paranormal romance yet again. She's very good. If you do not know of her, check her out as well. And then, of course, who could forget Sherrilyn Kenyon? Her vampires, also another romanticized, but very, very good story. Very good vampires. Like, I really like her vampires, but I like romanticized vampires a lot as well. But I also, like I told you in the last video, I also like vicious vampires, and I like those stories too. They're like very enthralling, you know. And Stephenie Myers vampires. They're romanticized. Sure, stories are usually accentuated, or the story that she had, you only have one, accentuated around romanticized style vampires. Her vampires, not all of them in her story don't drink human blood, because the main ones don't, but the other ones do. So I'm just telling you. So it's not like she just like, oh, these vampires don't drink blood and blah blah blah. The other ones do, and they're calculative, and like sometimes that type of evil can be even more threatening than I'm openly viciously attacking you. Like the kind of calculative evil that's like it has like a government or something. Like her vampires have that, you know. But that's in vampire lore anyway. Like you have the vampire council and things of that nature. That's been done a lot. So that's nothing new about that. They do have their culture-based things in their vampire world, so to speak. Just in vampire lore in general. Those are the 5, and I will put their names listed below in the description so you can check them out if you don't know of some of them. And in my next video, I am going to show you some of my favorite vampire books in my collection. I'm not going to go crazy because I have over 5,000 books. So it's a lot. So I have a good amount of vampire books in my collection. But I picked out some of my favorite ones. And some of those writers are involved. Also, there are some other ones as well. And you can look them up and check them out, see if you like them. That being said, check out these writers who do romanticized style vampires. They usually write paranormal romance, things of that nature, and I think that they are all worth reading. I named Stephenie last because Stephenie Myers pretty much only wrote the one story based around vampires, her version and adaptation of vampires. So I named her last because she's like would be the least I would go to, because she doesn't continuously write vampire stories. If she wrote another vampire story, I probably would check it out, obviously, because I read everything vampire. Rather, I don't know if I like it until I know, because it's vampires. So I like everything vampires. I'm just telling you. Check them out. They're worth reading. And I will see you in the next video, part 4 of my vampire series. Let's Talk Vampires. And it's just going to be me showing you my favorite books and telling you a little bit about them. So until then, stay scared.